Looks fabulous.
Fabulous.
What's up, man? We're here. We're ready. Let's do it.
All right. I'm down.
Kick it off.
LOVE. Yes, that's the word for me.
So this is going to be the best episode we've ever done because it's all about love. All the topics we've discussed so far, all the things we've talked about or disagreed about or agreed about, or all comes down to that, I think, right?
Yep.
We could agree, I think. I really do think that's the case no matter where you come from. Love. I was thinking about today, love is, love does. I wanted to talk about that today. If you think it does, love does. Because I do. So when we say that's what it's all about, what is love?
What is love? Baby, don't hurt
all
me.
These songs about it, all the, it is about that. It is. What is it?
Well, I would
let's do
say,
this. Hey, wait. Let's do a short description, like this is what love is, like a quick one, and then we'll spend the rest of the time really talking about it, digging into it.
Okay. My definition of love, as I currently hold it, is love is the space in which love embraces all things in all ways at all times. That to me is the simplest definition and the most complete definition of love as I know it.
Well, that's kind of what I wrote in the comments. So look at that.
Hey.
I'll read that. I think that God is love. That's my shortest, simplest description of it. Without God, there is no such thing. I think. The more I contemplated it this week and really in general, it's what it comes down to. It wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for him, and if there was no God, how could there be love? Maybe that's another way to say it. And so what I wrote in the comments was straight from the Bible. It says, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. It never fails.
All things, yes.
All things. You know what's so cool about that, John? It bears, I was looking at that with my wife this morning, and I said, it bears all things, and it endures all things. So it's not like it's all going to be fun and, fun and games and, smelling the roses. Otherwise, why would it say that? Why would we have to endure anything? Why would we have to endure, or why would love have to endure? I think it's referring to, it's for us. Like when we read that, I think it's a snapshot of our existence a little bit. Like we tend to think a lot of times we got it figured out. That's when I was reading through the love chapter, 2 Corinthians 13, the so-called love chapter. And I read that and I think, man, I feel like when I read it, I feel like I have barely scratched the surface of love, of what love really is. And I really like the sound of that because I've experienced love and I think it's incredible. It's awesome. But I feel like I've just barely scratched the surface of what that really is. And I think I have an eternity to understand it and know it more fully, which is just beautiful, wonderful. I've experienced it in pain. I've experienced it in joy. I've experienced it in much. I've experienced it in little. And I feel like it's what has it's like a foundation, I guess. And that kind of says what we were already saying. It's everything. It boils down to that.
Yes.
That was totally. That's my short description.
I agree with your short description.
Hey.
And the only thing I would add to it is one cannot be without love, but one can deny love's presence.
And what's that like, right? Like, how do you do that?
Fear. When
you
you
could
choose
say
fear,
that that's the opposite of. Well, I wouldn't say that's the opposite, actually. I don't know that I would. But go ahead. Sorry.
just the denial. It's like darkness is the denial of light in some senses. It's the absence of light. You could say it truly is no opposite of absence of light. It's not like the light fights with.
Lost you, John. We have the absence of John. Reset. All right, maybe it's going to be just me and half a screen, a black screen. Darkness. There he is.
I went into the darkness, and I want you
Look
all
at
to
that.
know
Yeah, how was it? He's
there's
resurrected.
nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, he's resurrected.
Yeah.
He conquered the darkness.
That's right.
John Crouch.
All the darkness in the world cannot put out a single candle, said St. Francis of Assisi.
So what were you saying? It's the being outside of love or not knowing it is the denial of it.
Yeah, you fear is the denial of love. And love allows us the freedom to deny it. And so if love's bearing something, it's because you're holding on to it.
How do you I agree with that, because you said something a couple weeks back that really stuck with me, and I share it a lot, is that love is there. It's just there. And I mean, that's a simple little statement that's so profound. And when you just think about that for a minute, it's there. No matter who we are, what we're like, what we're doing, what we think, what we agree about or disagree about, or what we fight about, and what we, it's there. And I think that's just so incredible. And you're right. It is our choice to have it, to experience it. And that's when I say earlier, it's like a foundation. I look at it as a foundation. Well, I say all the time, God is good. I have established in a definitive way in my life that I determine that God is good. And I feel like that's the same thing as saying God is love. Like when I say he's good, I feel like he's good because he made love to be. Like, and that's enough. Like, so that doesn't have to look like any particular thing. I can't, and that's why when I've gone through a dark place, when I've gone through the pain that I've gone through of late, that I can say he's good. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I just can't. Otherwise, I wouldn't see it that way, I don't think. And I think I've gone through a lot of life not seeing it that way. Like not really looking at it. I think I look at my circumstances and say, well, this just sucks. I mean, this just sucks. It's not fair. It's not fair. Well, it was me. And you become, wallow in your own self-pity or whatever it is. You don't think it's that. You just think it's not fair. You think that, nobody cares about me. Nobody, woe is me. It's a really woe is me kind of thing. And when you grasp the idea that there's this love, which is God, which is what I think is God, when you know that, like that's how I came to know God. Like it really was. I was lacking. I was in that spot. I was in that space of wallowing in my own sadness, that nobody cared about me, that it wasn't fair, that everyone's having fun but me, and that there's no one that can love me. Like so silly, really. Looking back, it's so silly, but it's so common. It's so common. And that's when I asked God who he is, really. It's what I did, it's what I did. I told you before, I was reading a book about how I could talk to Jesus like he's my friend, which again, I don't know anything about any of that. All I know is I did it because I didn't really have nothing else. It seemed to me I had nothing else, and I did it. And that love came in my room, that moment, like just undeniable. And I'm so grateful, It's not like life's been perfect since then, or I've always grasped this when I should.
Yeah.
But it's there and I know it, And so if I'm not in it, it's just because I've made some poor decisions, or I've just decided to, like you said, to choose really what's wrong, really what's just the opposite of what I should be choosing, really. but it was
Well,
my
you're
choice.
experimenting. I mean, you're experimenting. For me, there's no wrong choice. There's just a choice. There's just the choice that says there's no love here. I imagine you can see your ocean from. Can you see the ocean from your room right there?
Yeah, a tiny glimpse. Yes.
Yeah. And are you always aware that the ocean is there? Like, are you always looking at the ocean?
I am always aware the ocean's there because I love the ocean and I smell it. I look at the wind to see what the ocean's doing. Every morning I wake up and I look at the palm tree in my backyard and see which way the wind's blowing to determine if the ocean is calm or not.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I mean. Your value for the ocean. Everything you see is a tell of your relationship to the ocean. You can become like that with love. Everything in your life is a tell of the state of your relationship to love. And you can tell when you're in fear by noticing what's going on in your body, by noticing the thoughts in your head, and noticing the feelings and the way that you're responding to the relationships in your life. That's how brilliant we can be aware of love. And it's also how epically we can deny love's presence.
It's funny we're talking about it like this right now already because I started just pondering. I was pondering this, and I started thinking about his just free will. It led me to that aspect, and really just pondering the crucifixion for me. It was pondering that and reading about it, and I was sort of relating it to like a. This might take us a little off topic, but it's all about love. It always goes back to it. But I was thinking of like a board game, and I'm God, and I created a board game, and what kind of board game would I create? And it led me to this thinking like, well, if I created a board game where everybody just did whatever I wanted them to do, whatever I created, I'm going to create them, and then I just know what they're going to do all the time, and it's, what's the point? What makes that did not make sense to me. And then the only way any kind of board game that God would make made sense to me is if he said, okay, I'm going to put all these characters in here and give them free will so that they would choose me, and then I would win, like relating it to winning and losing, just from a board game perspective, trying to just, I don't know. It was a fun little exercise, and I just thought, I think when you think about that a little bit, it sort of makes sense. We've had this discussion about the meaning of, or maybe the meaning of life, maybe not in that direct terms, but because it's like why? I think we had that. Why do we exist? You said to play. I said to worship. And I've thought about that since. I'm not saying either one of us is right or wrong. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I think you have to really decide for yourself. But I could qualify what I said about to worship, meaning to choose to worship, not so much just simply to worship, but to choose to worship. That's a better way to put it, I think. And I think that's good enough for me, for the most part. It's a lot of it seems to be a mystery from that point on, which I don't mind. Like, it goes back to what I just said about experiencing love. The love that I've experienced, the God kind of love that I've experienced, I really truly believe I've only just glimpsed it. I just think I've only just glimpsed it, and it's so marvelous that I can hardly wait to glimpse more.
Yeah. And I agree. Love's the only mystery I know of. I don't know of any other mysteries. Love is the ever expanding, transcendent, amazing space. It is. There's no words.
So I wanted to read. I wanted to read from that chapter, John, because I think we can. I was reading it, and I think we'll agree for the most part. But I'm just going to read what it says love is. All right. All right.
Enough. Sounds good.
It says love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. Is not puffed up. Does not behave rudely. Does not seek its own. It's not provoked. Thinks no evil. Does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. I love that. Um, I love that part, like I equate the truth to love, to God. I feel like they're all sort of one and the same. I mean, not even sort of. I don't know how you can have any of the three without each other. I don't see how you can. And it bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But whether this is something I wanted to read too real quick. Love never fails, but whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. That right there, like that last part, speaks to that mystery, I think. Like we know, we know, and there's so much to unlock being alive in this earth. There's so much to unlock. And I think oftentimes in our lives we think we figured something out. And we do. I think we figure something out. But we never figure everything out. I just don't think we figure everything out. I think sometimes people think they do, and I think it's a very dangerous place to be. And that's where, even when it comes to some complex term or some metaphysical thing, right, that seems to line up, that seems perfect, it may not be.
Yeah, and I reiterate constantly, there's really only three things that I know without a doubt. I am lovable, I am loved, and I am loving. And I am free to see myself as unlovable, unloved, and unloving. That's how loved I am. And when I am saying someone or something is unlovable, or myself or someone is unloved and or unloving, that's when things don't make sense. Nothing makes sense without love.
Say that again. Say that again. When things don't make sense, why don't they make sense? I like that. Because I just want to hear it again.
Things don't make sense when I am denying the presence of love, because love is what makes sense of everything in your life. When you look back at your past with love, you can thank people for abuse. You can thank people for the challenges that you faced in relationship with them, because you see how well you're learning of allowing love. I've only been upset with people because I believe that they have done something to remove love from our relationship. Well,
okay, that's an interesting thing you bring up right there. You say that sentence just like you said it, that last one. It's about other. You can only.
You asked me to do that because nothing I say is. Yeah. So I'll try.
Okay.
I've only been upset with people when I believe, and I've chosen to see them as having caused love to be missing in our relationship. I've judged their behavior, I've judged their words, I've judged their actions as being something that has removed love.
Good. That I think I missed a part of that before, but now that makes more sense. It sounds more like what you usually say. I thought you were saying something different there for a sec. But because I want to talk about that. I want to talk what love means to others, or in our perspective of others and everything else. So I'm glad you brought that up. But I think that it sounded to me, what I heard was that you're making a judgment in which you shouldn't have done, and it's really not that other person at all. It's you determining something for whatever reason. You think they did something out of love, and that's where leads to this judgment. I think that's perfectly normal. I mean, or whether I think it happens all the time. I think you said something earlier about a tell. It's a tell. Like, I guess that's a poker term, right? I was just talking to my wife about it. I said, I get around people and I can tell, or I could read their mail. But we were having this conversation, and I don't necessarily want to have that conversation to say this is what this person's doing and why. It's more like I see what they're doing, but I'm seeing it through the eyes of love, and I have a compassion. I truly do like have this compassion that, okay, there's pain there and I see where that pain comes from. I really have a good inkling of an idea of exactly where that pain's coming from. And I desire to do something, like but I don't, because I don't think that I necessarily like need to. I just need to have that love in their presence. And a day will come, and may come, where I have the opportunity to be with them in that pain or whatever it is, and love them. I don't need to force that, but I do think that being mindful of it gives me words or even thoughts that I think thoughts can transpose. That sounds a little crazy, but I think just being in that room and loving them in your thoughts and in your heart from the place that's right is powerful. I think people can see it, sense it.
When you feel loved, when you are resting in that presence, you're very calm and relaxed. And what will happen, it happens all the time. This happens to me all the time. Every freaking conversation, every human being I meet, I'll come into contact with them, we'll start talking, and they'll just open up. And they're opening up because they're feeling love. It's not my love. It's not personal love. This isn't me loving them. This is me being loved.
What if it is?
By my source. It's not.
But how can it?
For me, love is transpersonal. It's so personal. It's so constant that it's transpersonal, in the sense that it feels very personal because it's so complete. But as you sit in it, you realize it's ever present. It's like the sun that's shining. The sun isn't shining on you because it likes you, because you've done something for it. It's just its nature to shine on you. So I would tell you, it's God's nature. It's his very nature, her very nature to love you. You are an extension of love in form. And when you've realized that, it's a very active presence in your life, but it's not something that you're having to try to make other people realize in any way, shape, or form. It's so natural. It's just you're relaxed. What happens then is people's stuff comes up in the presence of love. They start to feel that they can tell you things and show you things. I sat with a lady the other day. She talked for an hour and a half straight. She goes, "Oh my God, I don't know what's going on with me. I don't know why I just shared all of these things with you." And I said, "Well, I really appreciate it. I've seen more into your journey now, and I deeply appreciate the choices that you've made." To tears. I have nothing to do with that.
John, I would agree, but I also think there's more to it. Like, I agree, really what you said, I really agree with. There's not anything there that I would disagree with. But when I make the point of, like, what if it is you have something to do with it? Because you do. I mean, you're saying the words, it's coming through you. So that's where it comes to, like, the going, I guess we can go right into it. The term love does. So, like, love as a verb. I think it is. I can't think how it's not. So, like, maybe I can look at it like this. I wasn't looking at it like this before you said that, but to try to maybe make sense of, like, what you said and agree with it at the same time, trying to see what I'm seeing. So, like, there is this, love is, it just is, right? But it also does. And how does it? How does it in this earth? Like, there's you've said it before, I can love myself, therefore I love you. I'm not exactly sure how you term it, but you've often say something right along those lines, I think, right? I can love because I am loved.
I love you. Yes.
Yes. So could it be, and I know the Bible refers to different types of love, like, a God kind of love, I don't remember the terms. I think there's three.
Arrows.
Yeah. Which could it be that, you pull from that foundation and, okay, where are these avenues for it, I mean, I like the sound of that. I like the idea of that. I feel like it's right. Like, cause I often say I love people. I do. I say it. And I wonder, I know I say that a lot and I really think about it a lot. Like, do I really? What does that mean? What does it mean? And it goes back to what I said just a little bit ago. when I'm in a room and I see somebody being something they're not, or there's some pain that they're speaking out of, that they're hiding for whatever reason, and it's quite normal. It's just quite normal. But there's something in me that loves them still. There's like a compassion, right? And there could be a judgment. I mean, if I'm in a space where I'm just like in a funk, I'll judge them and be like, oh, I'm glad I don't think that way. I know they're having problems in their marriage. I just know it, and I am too. I mean, that's not really coming from a place of love in me when I'm thinking like that. But when I'm thinking and I'm seeing it, and I'm just like, I love that guy, and I did it with somebody the other day. I said, hey, I sensed that there was something wrong, right? And they weren't saying it, but I just sensed it. And I said, hey, do you have anybody to talk to? And he was like, I don't. And I expected him to say, something. And he just right up said, I don't. And I said, well, hey, man. And I didn't really say much then. I said, I just was just loving him. I said, oh, wow, I didn't say like that's sad or you need to find somebody. But before I had left, I went to him and just said, hey, man, if you ever want to talk, dump on me. I got some really good ears. I would love to just listen. Just as simple as that. But that was an action, I'm telling him, it was an action out of love. So I feel like there's it's not just as simple as like it's just there and I happen to be tapping into it and doing something with it. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I hear is you're aware of the presence of love. You see that love. You're experiencing the reflection of that love in your view of this other person. You're looking at this other person and you're noticing the presence of love is present in you and it's available for them. And what I'm hearing is then you're then dialoguing with them about that presence in you. You're using your mind, and the language to communicate with them. And the hope, I imagine, is that they make contact with that same presence of love within themselves. Yeah. So for me, the doing is about getting out of the way. All I'm doing is getting out of the way and knowing when I'm in the way.
Yeah, John. I don't know. It's hard to see that. Like,
I have
do
no
you think
credit.
there's more? I think there's more, though. There's more of you involved in that, though.
Well, what? How? Other than allowing myself to be loved, that's really it. And now,
isn't that something though, right? You're allowing it, so that's a. You have to. You're communicating. It's
like I'm allowing myself to breathe. I mean, when how given to fear we are, and you begin to get honest about your fear and you begin to allow that fear to experience a love of acceptance, because acceptance is really the pathway to love. It really is. When you look at that guy and you look at somebody else's marriage and you totally accept that they are creating that just perfectly. And if they're not experiencing love, that's because that's currently what they're doing. They're currently saying, my wife doesn't love me, or I don't love my wife, and this is why. And you can look at that and you can totally accept it. You can be like, yes, because I know I've done that myself. I know what that's like. I'm with you. I hear you. I understand. And then here's the key question. Is that what you want? What do you most desire with your wife? I desire to love her. Why can't you love her now?
Well, see, you're asking those questions. Like so here again, I don't think this needs to really like.
I'm just uncovering the obstacles to love. I'm not loving that. To me, that's not me loving them. That's me meeting them in their intellect.
Well, what are you doing when you say I love you to your wife, to me, to your kids?
Just recognizing that truth, because I'm loved and I know I'm loved. I automatically love you. It's like why does the sun make plants grow?
Yeah, but I don't think it's that way, John. We're not the sun. We're not plants. we're no, really. I know. And we're talking about a foundational principle, right? I mean, we can relate to those things in a lot of things. I get it. I get it. But I think that so what do you think when it says when and again, whether you agree with it or not, or you think it's not the right language, but when Jesus said to John, if you love me, do you love me? He says, feed my sheep. What do you think he meant? Do you think that?
I think he said that to Peter when
Was it
he
Peter?
comes.
I thought it was
Yeah,
John.
he comes back. I think it's Peter, but
Either way, it doesn't matter.
He comes back. Yeah, it's after. Right, they think he's died and all that, and I won't get into that. But he comes back and they meets him at the shore, and Peter is the one who denied him, and he looks at Peter and says, "Peter, do you love me?" And I guess I don't know what it says in the Aramaic if this is, but what I've seen is Jesus basically offers him, "Do you love me like God kind of love?" And Peter responds, "No, I love you with human love, phileo."
Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
and I mean, again, I think because in the realm of the human, what's in the way of love is the intellect. I'm telling you now, the only reason people aren't feeling love is because they're using their intellect and their mind to create perceptions and reasons for why love is not available. This is why we're offended. This is why we need forgiveness. You're not going to experience love in a relationship you haven't forgiven.
But what if you use your intellect for love, or with love, or in love?
To me, the intellect
because your
has
intellect's
nothing
there.
to do with
Period.
love.
Well, your intellect's there. It's part of you.
Well,
No
I
matter
would
what
say
you
the
believe.
intellect
So
is.
it has to do something.
I would say the intellect is like the ones and zeros in programming. The intellect is how you have learned to communicate via language and via symbols to people, but it's not necessary.
Well,
Language is.
Yeah, okay, that's great, but it's there, and so you even just saying what you just said, in how we've learned to assimilate and all this. But if you've tapped into love, whatever you call it, however you define it, it should shape your intellect. It should, by that definition, your intellect should be influenced heavily by it.
I think you can then use words to describe and to show people the process of unlearning.
Why is what I'm saying hard to, like, so not true to you? Like, I don't know, maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. I'm curious. Like,
for me, the intellect has nothing to do with love.
But it has something to do with.
It has everything to do with
existence.
It's just a way that we communicate.
But again, we're communicating love.
That's even possible, but it's not. Communication cannot increase love or decrease love. There's nothing you can do to get more love, and there's nothing.
I get that. But you can express love. We're talking about expressing love, about being a vessel for it, or being a tool, whatever you want to call it. I think clearly we are that. Like, and there's something important about that. There's something important about that. I
say explore it. For me, the intellect. Listen, I went the intellectual route fully, as far as I could go in it.
Well, I'm not saying I need to go the intellectual route. I'm just trying to say that I have access to this love, and I do believe, when Jesus says the two most important commandments are to love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, and I feel like that's a go and do type statement for me. And I'm not going out of my way. It's still saying the same thing. Like, I tap into it. I can't do it unless I understand it. And
sure. Well, how do you love God?
How do I love God?
Can you love God without God?
No.
Right. So the only way for you to love God is to know God as love, to know the love that God is. And how do you do that?
By spending time with Him, by communion with Him. To honestly, really.
And if God is love and love is everything, how can you spend time with something that's ever present? How could you not be in love's presence? How could any moment?
Well, by the denial of it, like you said earlier.
Yeah, but once you realized how loved you are and that love asks nothing of you,
well, I think we still go through bouts of denying it. I do. I think I do.
I think you do. I think you do while you're unlearning what you taught yourself about the sense of fear and about feeling unloved. Yes. But I think you get to a place, and I would say everyone knows that place inside themselves, when you finally decide that you're only going to live loved.
Do you think he said, love your neighbor as yourself? Do you think that some of those things that reference going and loving, feed my sheep, there's a lot of them in that I can bring up. Do you just think that was all just sort of nonsense then? Or what's the point of it? What was the point of that being written or said or...
Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, how do you love yourself? You have to know yourself. And I'm not talking about small self. I'm talking about big self. You got to know what you are.
Yes.
And the only way for you to know what you are in this realm, in this dimension on earth, is to undo what you've done. Is to unlearn fear.
But why is that? Why can't you learn love and then go do love? Why can't you just simply do that? Why does it have to be, and I get that. I'm not saying that's wrong. But I don't think that's like this only path or whatever.
Well, I would tell you, love is not possessive. Love is not fearful.
Sure.
Love it's simply love. It's the simplest thing there is.
Yes. So why can't we, so we get that, right? So isn't it, to me, it's desirable to spread it, to share it, to be it, and like I said before, it's not as simple as I'm just going to go out and love on people. Maybe it is as simple like that for some people or whatever. Maybe it's effective, maybe it's not. But if I exist in His love, and I go out and I'm in it. It's there. I know it, and I can smile and I can understand and I'm loved, you know. And when somebody else just says, "Hey, what is that about you?" or "What is it?" you know, and it's like, I don't feel like all of a sudden I'm just like, you know what it is? It's God's love, and you need it. You have to have it. I have no inkling in me that does that or says that or has a desire to do it. The immediate reaction I get when something like that happens is like, you know, I mean, I just think God is good. That's usually what I say something like that. Or if it's a question towards me, what do you mean by that? Well, you know, He's good. And I might share a story or something, or I might just say, you know, I have no reason to be, there's really no reason to think otherwise. Or it's kind of like as simple as that. It's like, why would I choose anything other than that? Like, and I think people look at that. It's a very foreign thing to hear, maybe, like, because it really is that simple. And it's a choice. What I'm saying in that is I've made a choice to love and to be loved. But I really desire in that moment that, you know, and it's just my desires that person feels that you know, I look at it like it's a seed. Like maybe it's a seed that was planted in them because I've made these choices to love God and to know love and somebody came around somewhere somehow and got a taste of that, a little seed that maybe perhaps unlocks their ability to know it. Good way to put it. Like that.
I mean, you look at, you know, I love looking at kids or anyone. You know, you walk through Trader Joe's or whatever, you see a little kid. You look at that little kid. I'll look at little kids and I'll smile at them. And you can tell the ones that are living around parents who love them because they'll smile right back at you. You'll also be able to tell the kids that are used to a good amount of fear because they'll look at you. They'll kind of be taken back by it. It's that simple for me. Most people are walking around not feeling loved. And the only reason they don't feel loved is because they're believing their story about being a victim of some unloving act that happened in their life. And because of love, they're free to believe that. Now, because I know I'm loved, and I know that love is ever present and it's available for anyone, there's no need for me to shine it on anyone particularly. It's shining in and of itself. It's present in and of itself. And so I can walk down the Trader Joe's and say hello to people and greet the vegetables and my favorite avocados and chicken tikka masala and the cashiers. And I just have a great time. And some people are grouchy and they're, you know, they won't hardly make eye contact. That's all good too. They're just as loved as the person that's like, we're connecting, we're having this great laugh. I was like, last time I was at Trader Joe's, I was totally entertained, having a great time with the cashiers talking about running an underground Trader Joe's up here in Nevada City, a black market Trader Joe's. And we were just having a grand old time. So for me, the wonderful thing is that because I'm living in love, there's this sense of abundance and love within me. And the difference between me now and me a few years ago is when I was in the Trader Joe's and someone wouldn't love me, I would judge them because I would say, oh, now I don't get to feel loved because they're not accepting me. And right there, I just brought up an obstacle to love. And so for me, that my job is not to love you, because I'm automatically loving you when I feel loved. When I'm not loved, that's really where the work is for me. The work for me is to recognize when I'm not feeling the presence of love. And how will I know I'm not feeling the presence of love? Because I'll be judging. And why am I judging? Because I still think that fear will get me what I want.
So it's a journey, John. It's a journey, and we're all on it, and we're all in different places on it and believe different things and are trying to figure it out. But there's still some doing there. There's still choice. Just the simple fact of making a choice is something. And if we can be mindful of that, whether it's in our intellect or whatever it is, there's still, I'm choosing to be in that person's space. I'm choosing to say these words. I'm choosing to do my podcast. I'm choosing to do this Twitch church. My intention in doing this is to again have an open and honest conversation about topics but I also think there's a reason. I'm not just I feel somewhat driven, or I feel, I don't want to say obligated, but I feel like there's unction. That's probably a good word to use, to do this because I feel like it might help somebody somewhere, and I think that's an intention, or that speaks of an intention, but that intention is birthed from love. I do believe that. And I think that it's important, whether it's this or whether it's just about anything, whether it's you going to Trader Joe's and smiling at people and loving, existing in love, it's still important. And maybe it's not, as you don't see it that way, but people do. Somebody, you can affect somebody's life in a way so profoundly that it's just beautiful, and it's wonderful to be a part of that. It's wonderful to know you can be a part of that.
Well, if they let you, there's plenty of people that want nothing to do with love. They're not going to let you have any effect on them, no matter how much you are.
But that doesn't matter. That's not really saying anything to what I just said, though. Like I'm going back to us as being, maybe it goes back to like bearing fruit, like we talked about last week, seed time and harvest and things. And here's the big one, right? And I didn't really think about bringing this up, but I mean, it's the verse everybody knows, right? And I want to maybe see what you think about that. God so loved the world, gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes on him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That sound right? Again, that's like I look at that verse and I think it's, I always wondered, you used to see it at baseball games and everything. I didn't know what it was. I never even looked it up, but I always saw it everywhere. And I don't think I ever looked at it. I don't know that even when I became a Christian, I didn't really go straight to that, So, but then when I finally did, and I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, why is that the verse that everybody needs to sort of share around? Because I think there's a lot of other ones maybe that might seem to make more sense in that regard. But it is a beautiful. I choose to look at it like it just sums everything up. I think I hear your words and I hear your philosophies, and even what we're talking tonight, we seem to somehow we seem to get into these I don't even know if they're disagreements, because I still don't feel like I disagree. But I'm trying to say I think it's important to love, do love as a verb, and for some reason you sort of don't want to.
Because then I get to be. Well, for me, what I hear is you think there's a belief there that says I know when I'm loving, and I know that that's what I should be doing. And for me, all I need to know, for me, Brian, is all I need to know is that I am loved. That's all I need to know. Everything else takes care of itself.
But that seems quite selfish, and that's why I think it's. No, I don't mean it in a bad way, John.
Selfish to want to be loved all the time. by God himself.
No, but I think if it's just that, no, I think if it's simple, it's not the fact that being loved, that's not, look, I feel the same way. I absolutely feel the same way. I can't really do anything else I'm talking about unless I get that first. But I think if that's what seems selfish to me. Like that, there has to be something.
Well, everything else takes care of itself to me. Everything else takes care of itself.
Well, then that just to me says sit in a chair on a porch somewhere and just be in it, and whatever happens happens.
If that's the desire of your heart, then that's what you do. But no one sits in their chair permanently.
So love does something in you. Love unctions you.
No, there's just a desire to express love. And so what I notice each day, that's why I started.
That's a perfect thing right there. There's a desire to express it. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and that takes care of itself to me. All I do is get up in the morning.
John, you exist as a human being. You're different than me. You know what I was thinking about today? We're all the same, but we're different. I almost wrote that down. We're all the same, but we're different. And I am going to write that down and unpack that a little bit more. But I was sitting in church thinking about that. We're all the same, but we're different. And I was thinking of it along the lines of Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit being one. They're all the same, but they're different. And then I started to think, well, that's us. We're all the same. I started thinking about me and you. I think we're the same, but we're different. And I think about your comments of like, there's no mystery in the human, what is it? The human
experience.
Yeah. And I think it even applies to that. To me, that even applies to that. We're all the same, but we're different. And I love that. I love that statement because I just can't accept that. It just anything goes. Like once I tap into this beautiful love, then anything goes. I just kind of mosey around the planet in my skin suit until my skin suit's no more. And then I mosey around somewhere outside of it. And I feel like that's just so, I guess it's fine. It's totally fine. But it lacks something to me. It just plain lacks something to me. That's a good way to put it. It's no judgment. No judgment. It just.
Yeah, but what does it lack?
It lacks some sort of meaning or purpose or, yeah.
What purpose could you have then to be loved and to be the very channel by which love is constantly being extended in your presence into every morsel of beingness within a 20-mile radius of you?
I don't understand the question. Ask me again. I don't understand.
What greater meaning or purpose could one have than to be loved and in turn loving? Without it needing to be a specific way.
I think you're right. There's no greater purpose than that. But the internal love part signifies purpose within your own question. To me, it does.
There is no conditions for it. There is no way to get more love. There is no way to get less love.
Well,
you deny the presence of love. That's it. But that does not negate love itself. It simply doesn't allow it into that experience that you're creating. And then you think you have the proof via the intellect. Look, guys, see the starving children in Africa? That proves that there's no such thing as
I'm not saying that. Not at all.
I don't think
you have to say that. But yeah, that's okay, John. That is what people say. But I think that's an interesting thing you bring up because I think that I see you do that. And it goes back to your own experience with fear. It does. Because this is an area where I can't grasp what you're saying. And nothing wrong with that, John. Nothing wrong with it. I'm just pointing it out. It seems
it's the same thing in reverse. The person that says, look, don't you see how loving we are? We're feeding all the children in Africa is on the opposite spectrum of the person who says, look, there's no love because look at the starving children in Africa. They're both doing the same thing. If you desire to feed the children in Africa, you'll go feed the children in Africa. It doesn't make you more loving. It doesn't make the children more or less loved. You're simply fulfilling.
I'm not talking about it like a gauge. I'm not looking at it like a gauge, though. Somehow that's how got into the conversation here. I'm not saying that you're going to be more of a lover or less of one by doing love.
There's no way to measure love There's no way to think that you know what's loving and what's not loving for others or anything like that. All you can know is when you're in the presence of love and when you seem to not be in the presence of love.
You're double speaking right there. I think you're double saying the same thing in two different against each other, because we do know. You know. But then you're saying you don't know. You can't know. So I don't know. I feel like we're wordsmithing here, John, a little bit. We're wordsmithing. Both of us are. Okay. I'm not saying just you.
Well, I'm attempting to communicate with you simplicity of love.
But see that in doing so, you seem to be making it more complicated for me.
No, I think you're hearing it through a complicated lens, Brian.
No. Because I feel like I'm doing the same thing.
Well, make it simple then.
Love and be loved and love.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. There is no way in which you are more loving or less loving. If you're sitting on your couch,
none of that has anything to do with what I said. That has nothing to do with what I said.
Right. So sitting on your couch watching
Netflix. But why does that? That's where it gets complicated. You just brought something else into what I. Well, no, you said there's no way. I'm not talking about anything negative. I'm saying love and be loved and love, be loved and love. I'm not saying anything about don't do anything.
Right. All I'm saying is there is no way then for you to not be loved, and there's nothing you need to do.
But why does that have anything that complicates it to me?
No, it's simple. There's no way for you. So no matter what you do, you're loved. So then, now that you know that, I am created as God created me to be, I am free. God is love. Therefore, I can create my moment-to-moment experience. I can fill this moment with fear. I can choose fearful thoughts, John,
that seems to me a whole different. I love this. I'm glad we're talking about this. Look. When I say I'm to be loved and to love, none of that other stuff comes into my presence or being when I'm saying that.
I get it, because it's a nice platitude, but what I'm talking about is the exact.
It's the platitude. It's so simple. Simple.
Right. But most people you meet do not agree and do not feel that way.
But John, isn't that making a judgment? Now that's a statement of judgment.
It's not a judgment. Go out and.
I'm saying most people don't matter in that statement I made. I'm saying that I'm not even thinking about most people or this people or that people. I'm simply thinking that I'm to be loved and to love. Now I'm to love those most people you're talking about. I'm to love everything there is. I mean, it's just I can't help it. So I'm saying the same thing as you most of the time here. I don't know where that other stuff comes in. I don't know why that is so much of a why that needs to be a topic. I can get it if we're talking about something else. If we're talking about most people and what most people do, what's the point of even talking about that, really? Because we're in this state of just being loved. Because
we have an audience, okay? So we have people. It's like when I do my podcast, I'm speaking to that audience about my journey.
And that's important.
And it seems to be useful because when I share with people, have recognized obstacles that I have created to love's presence, I've owned and taken responsibility for creating those obstacles. They now become stepping stones. And I realize in the middle of something that I thought there was no love, that love was always there. That seems to be very helpful for others.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying. That's all you're ever going to do is undo what you've done to tell yourself there's no such thing as love. Once you're loved, there's nothing left to do but be loved. And by being loved, let me finish. Yeah. By being loved, what happens is you wake up each day and you're aware of that love and you say, okay, love, or Abba, or whatever you want to call it, God, what do I desire most today? And then suddenly you'll notice a desire arises within you.
Like what?
Give me what? I feel like calling Brian Mayer and I don't even know it's his birthday. I feel like calling Brian Mayer and just telling him how much I appreciate him. Now, I'm not doing that. I am not making that happen. I'm not thinking like, I don't get up and go, okay, I want to appear to be loving. It just happens in and of itself because I allow myself to constantly be a conduit of the presence of love. So love is both the presence and it is the verb fulfilling itself. And really what I am is the witness, the observer, and the experiencer of that all at once. And that's why I say, if I decide to sit all day and not talk to anyone else, because that's the authentic desire of my heart, that's love in action. If I decide to go...
That's being loved. That's being loved in action.
No, it's also love in action. And if
in what way? In what way is your love in action when you're just sitting there doing nothing around nobody? That's love towards yourself. And again, that's being loved. Like how is that any kind of action?
Rest is as much of an action to me.
For yourself.
Relaxing, resting, being still is as much of a choice as it is to go to Africa and feed as many people as you can from that same desire.
Yeah.
So for me, if somebody's out there feeding the children in Africa from a desire that's purely from love, amazing. There's also people out there feeding in children in Africa because it makes them feel better about themselves, and then they tout that. And it's really an obstacle. It's really fear that's running that entire ideology inside of them. Now that's for them to figure out and to decide. For me, if I wake up and all I'm going to do today is stay in bed, I'm not going to move out of bed. That to me is equal to if I get up and go to work for 16 hours a day to put food on the table. I don't make any distinction.
Well, see, that's where I think this gets complicated because, and maybe in my eyes, it's a little off because if I go back to the simple statement of to be loved and love, I think to love involves intention, purpose, meaning, other people. I get what you're saying, but I still feel like you're saying what I'm hearing is when I decide that I'm just going to stay in bed all day and it's the same as going to work, I hear you saying I'm being loved, which is important, but I don't see that at all as loving.
Right. And that's your creation, right? So your mind is telling you that that's not loving. And then I would imagine you experience that as a not loving action. And that's the freedom.
Towards others, I mean, it's loving towards yourself, okay, which is fine. But then that goes back to the whole selfish.
As you love yourself. Is that not what we said? How do you love others if you don't love yourself?
Yeah. I get it. You're right. But when you're the way you're saying it is like it's like I'm saying be loved and love, and you're saying, okay, when I stay home and I do this and that's loving. I think that's being loved. So I think there's two distinct sort of principles in that statement. And I think to you, it just seems like a circle for yourself.
It's just the same
and
thing.
For yourself, and anybody who gets a piece of the circle, whenever you happen to be somewhere, they can choose to have some part of that circle that you're in.
Circular reasoning, is that what you're talking about? Have you been sitting and talking with intellectuals about circular reasoning?
No, I honest to God, John, that's what I'm hearing. I don't know what that, I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Yes. Love is this all-encompassing space. It's all present. There's nothing you can do to be more loved. There's nothing you can do to be less loved. Therefore, do whatever your heart.
Yeah, so now let's go back to the board game analogy I made earlier. Let's say God made a board game and everybody on the game was like that. You think he would make a game like that?
God doesn't make board games.
Okay, so then my analogy's pointless then, I guess.
Yeah, so God makes children. His children can make board games, and then his children can play a board game in which they cast role as the great.
Well, then why did God make us? So that lines up then with your philosophy of He made us to play. But
love extends? It extends itself. It extends itself.
Yeah, it does. I think
yes, without effort. There's no volition. It's just its nature. Love loves itself, and it is constantly revealing itself to itself.
You know, I don't know how this plays into this. There was a book I read by a guy, Dr. Dean Ornish, I think was his name, and it was about I think the science of love. And it was super fast. Someone gave it to me a while back, back when I was in a funk, before I knew love, before I knew Christ, and I read this book. I still have it. And one of the things that stood out to me in this book was that they did this study on Russian orphans.
Right.
And they
weren't touched. Yeah.
That weren't touched or loved. I mean,
Right.
they sort of did it, and they didn't grow. They still ate the same as kids that were touched and loved. And it's fascinating to me because, I mean, again, that sort of makes me, in my head, in my perception of love and everything else, which I don't think is different than yours ultimately, I just don't. I still see that as like a kid doesn't have a choice when they're an infant. When they're fresh out of the womb, they don't really, you may say they have a choice, and maybe they do, that we don't get it. I don't remember having those choices. I didn't choose my mom and dad. I didn't.
You don't remember choosing them, but you can't say you didn't. You just don't know.
That seems a bit outlandish to me, John. So let's say I did choose them. Let's say I chose them, then it's my fault I was born.
There's no fault.
Well, whatever it is. All right, I'm an infant. I'm an infant that needs cared for.
Yeah, and you chose parents who were
There's very little choice in the sense of the way we talk about it now. It's different. It's different no matter how you look at it. It's different. It's different. You know, and somebody's there, I think, by God, to care for that infant until they're in a position where they can care for themselves. To me, that's love in action. That's love doing. Now, I can sit here and choose and say, you know what? I don't feel like taking care of my kid today because I just don't feel that way. You know, so therefore I'm exhibiting love still. But that kid's not eating today. But it's okay.
Yeah, so you take it to such an extreme, Brian. That's not what I'm never saying that.
I know you're not saying that, but
that would never happen.
But the same philosophy would have to apply in that regard, and that's where I
You're looking at it as cause, and you're looking at it from a Newtonian cause and effect. A thing in motion does not,
But John, we can't just sit around. I don't think that we can just sit around. I just don't believe that we were made. I don't believe that we were made to just walk blindly through life in love. It's like love. I'm in love. I have love.
Do I look like I do that, Brian?
No, but sometimes I feel like you say that's okay to do that or whatever, right?
Of course it is, because everything's okay.
Well, then it's okay not to feed your kid.
Yes, of course it's okay to not feed you.
I don't think that's okay.
Okay. Then that's
I don't think that's love. I don't think that's in the least bit even close to it. I think love.
What do you imagine the person that's not feeding their kids? Why do you think they're not feeding their kids, Brian? Is it because they don't feel loved, or because they do feel loved?
Well, why do you think? Why do you think like somebody around you might need that love, but you just say, "Well, that's their problem." You know, like well, yeah, because you say I have love and they've chosen not to accept it. Related to those around you. Going back to what I'm saying, I'm intentional about it. Like I feel like there's a love in me that I want other people's to experience, that I desire to share with other people, that I desire to give them, and intentionally. But for some reason, that to me, that's love in action. That's love as a verb. That's me, first of all, accepting love and being loved, but then loving. And that crosses a lot of channels. Like there's some responsibility in that. Like there's an element of responsibility that's in there somewhere. And I really
that's to me the whole game of sin and guilt and shame are all in the ideas of what's loving and not loving. They don't exist in my world because I don't pay attention.
Yeah, I get it.
To whether or not I think I'm loving or not. All I know in and of myself is when I'm judging, when I'm in fear.
But don't you think it's possible to look at it outside of that? And that's what I'm seeing. Like I look at it outside of that. I feel
I can't look outside of myself. I
have a sense of responsibility with that love that's healthy. I don't look at it like, well, if I don't do that, there's shame, or if I don't go out and love on people, then I'm doing something wrong. It doesn't come to my mind. But there's an unction. I think that word's a good word. Unction. Like love unctions me to do. not sin doesn't unction me to do it. The shame of not doing it doesn't unction me to do it. Love itself unctions me to do it. I feel like that's simple.
Awesome. Then you got it.
Well, what do I have? Love. I have the same thing as you. So we're the same, but we're different. I love that. I love it.
Well,
there's something to that.
The difference is seemingly in your strategies. I say there's no strategy to be loved or to extend love, because it's just the nature of love. It's like I'm trying to convince the sun to shine on you. There's no strategy to get the sun to shine on you.
There is. There's a choice.
No, the sun is shining, and then you can.
Well, no, but there's a choice in the beginning. So
I want to grow this plant, and I understand that the plant needs a certain amount of sun. So I put the plant in the sun.
What if you never had that concept of fear and shame and
then you
guilt?
wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be on Earth. You wouldn't be in this school. You'd be elsewhere. You'd be in other dimensions, much more heavenly dimensions.
So maybe that's the topic. See, I feel like I'd do better in this conversation if that was the topic, fear, rather than love. Because I feel like
it's
that's
a much more useful topic.
What's that?
For most people. I think it's a far more useful topic for most people, because you don't need to know what, you do not need to even seek love. All you need to do is understand the obstacles you've created to the awareness of love. Once you know the obstacles and you dissolve them, you allow love to dissolve them in you.
I think love. I think love is. I 1,000% believe we're on the exact same page when it comes to being loved. I don't see any difference in anything we're saying in that regard, John. I just don't. I think it's the loving part where we seem to somehow have a different perspective on what that looks like and what that is, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. But what was I going to bring up? I don't know if this changes the subject, but I think you'll like this. So my wife and I got in a big argument.
Awesome.
Recently. Yeah.
Well done.
Nothing out of the norm for most people, right? Happens. But this was different. This was very different. The argument itself wasn't. Not at all. But the way it ended was different than anything I've experienced. And that's what I wanted to say. And I think this is love. This is love being love. And so I was at this point where it doesn't make sense. It usually doesn't make sense when you're arguing about things that just are not really mean anything ultimately. And I was praying about it. I got up in the morning and I was praying about it, and I was sincerely seeking God to know what is this? Like, how do I understand this? How is this? I don't like it. I don't want it to be this way. What can I do? What can you show me? What can you tell me? What can you drop in my spirit? Whatever. I wasn't just sitting there, just sort of just soaking him in. And I don't think, I'm not saying he spoke to me and said, do this. I think it was like this idea of a lot of what we talk about. What is it? What are you thinking? What do you think I think? Like that was what I felt like. Well, I don't think that there's love. I don't think this is love. It's not exhibiting itself. I mean, I don't even really know. I wasn't even really paying attention. But what I felt like doing was asking her, what is God saying to you? Rather than what are we? And you know what else? This came to me. I started thinking, if it's all the words are coming out, it's I or me. I this and you this, or you. I mean, I and you. And it's like you're doing this. You're doing this, and I don't like this, and I don't think it's right, and you're not doing, and the same thing coming back. And then it occurred to me that the covenant of marriage is that we're to come together to become one. And I just all of a sudden thought it's about we. And so when I'm saying you are doing this, I'm saying I am doing this. Awesome.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so we're in the heat of it. And I said, what is God saying to you? And At first it wasn't received well, and then I'm like, what is God saying to you? And she said a sentence, and I get chills thinking about it, John. She just said a sentence, and it was right. It was just everything changed in a second. And she looked at me in my countenance, and it changed her too. And it's like, and that was when this conversation came up about it's not about I and you, it's about we, and we're one. And so when I'm saying this about you, I'm saying about myself. And when I'm saying this about me, I'm saying it about you. And it's powerful, man. That's love. That was love. We were experiencing it pure, like right there. It wasn't even, the content wasn't even relevant so much. It was just plain love, really, you know? And it's something that we've talked about it since. And it just almost feels like we unlocked something, you know? But this was we. This wasn't just me. This was we. This was my wife and I together.
Beautiful.
And, you know, I think that I've been pondering it ever since, thinking that can be me and everyone else. And that so lines up with the stuff you say. I don't know about all of it, but the part about there's something, when you have some angst against somebody, it's usually something in you, right? Or it's always something in you.
Yes,
and
it is.
That absolutely lines up with that. But again, I sort of go to this place of like, it means something besides just being. It means something, and it's important to know it, to grasp it, to experience it, and apply it. Apply it.
That's your laboratory, and I trust and appreciate and respect your perspective. And it doesn't mean that I see the cause and effect.
But I think you're applying it, John. I think you're applying it. And I'm happy you are. Like, I just am. You know, when you say things like, I know you say you're just being, but gosh, you know, I just don't think I think you're applying it in the same exact way I'm saying it. But for some reason, you don't. It's
just like a good bowel movement. You're relaxed. Things just work. The poop moves out of you.
Yes,
like
yes. But John, it's not always that way. It's not always that. Well, it doesn't always seem that way.
Only because I'm like this. I'm all tensed up. I'm all like, oh no, what's happening? When I'm doing that, of course, nothing works because I'm grasping. I'm afraid. I'm saying I value fear. And there's something here that is keeping me from feeling loved. And until it changes, I'm stuck.
What if we look at it like this? What if it reinforces the choice? Like, so I go out and I'm with others and I'm experienced love together, or I've maybe taught somebody about it and they grasp it. Doesn't that in some way just like, so the next time you come to that choice, or when you get in a funk, or you get into judgment, or you fall into fear somehow, some way, you know, whether you think you will ever again or not, probably likely that we all will, in some shape or form. Doesn't those experiences you've had in love, being loved and loving, help you? Like I relate it to what I've said before about when I get in a funk, or if I get in a funk, whatever you want to call that, fear, if I get in fear, before it would last quite some time. And then I would figure I'd make the choice. I'd make the choice to be loved again. And like I was saying the other night, I think now it lasts maybe 20 minutes. If I get in that way, I quickly recognize it. But I think that's a result of my past experiences somewhat, you know, like it's not, I can never really grasp the idea of just being and to me it says this. It says kumbaya, que sera, my friend. I'm just gonna walk in the. I just don't see it. I can't live it. I can't accept it. Like I don't know.
How passive is John Crouch to you? Am I a passive guy?
Well, that's just it. That's just it. Like that's why I think you're living what I'm saying, but for some reason you don't Like,
no, because what you see, the expression is just.
How about
love
this? I think you say
yourself.
passive things, but you're not passive. Maybe that's the way I look at that. I see it. I sometimes you make some statements that you don't really. You just say they're if statements. They're like if statements, but they're not really.
There's no threat to love.
Yeah.
Then there's nothing to fix and nothing to change. So now, what are you going to do? You're going to play.
I'm going to go out and love people. I'm gonna hear John say something in his podcast, and I'm gonna call him and tell him I love him because I feel like I should.
Then you should, right? Then you just should.
And John's gonna appreciate it, and John's gonna feel love.
Of course, I will. I appreciate all experience. All experiences are equal to me because I can learn from all experiences and/or become aware of what I'm doing to myself in an experience. And if I say, "Oh, Brian doesn't love me because Brian doesn't agree with me," I experience
the thing is, I do agree with you, though. That's just it. Like, I do.
Well, I'm just giving you an example of how I could choose to deny love. Now, I can also say, oh, it doesn't seem that Brian and I agree about the cause and effect relationship of love, and that doesn't change the presence of love that is here right now. It does not affect my sense of our unity, that Brian cannot keep me from loving him because I know I am loved. Not because that's what I'm supposed to do, and not because it's even what I want to do. It's because I know I'm loved. I turned my entire attention upon that fact. And that's the presence that I live from.
Let me it's an interesting thing, John. Our conversations. Because but no, look, I think it's a challenge. It's a very challenging. Again, I keep thinking of this statement that we're the same but different. I often, and it's not. There's a handful of people, maybe just two that I could think of, you and someone else, and they're very different topics, but I have the same feeling. It's not any kind of feeling of like being right or wrong. It's this feeling of like somehow we're disagreeing, but we're totally agreeing. And I don't know what that is. This is how I feel about it, right? Like, I don't know what that is, but I'm intrigued by it. And I feel like there's something important in it. And I desire to do it more. So whatever that says, I don't know. But I like to think it's the basis for how we can always continue to talk and have good dialogue that is meaningful. To me, it's meaningful, not only to me or to us, but to anybody else. And that's important to me. I like the idea of that. And I just do. I just like the idea of that. I think that's why I'm doing this. Otherwise I look forward to this. I look forward to it. And I don't even think it's a tension. I was thinking about it because I watched these back, right? It feels like tension now. It feels like tension when we're doing it. But when I watch it back, it doesn't look like tension. To me, anyways. It looks like we're on these like really great truths. And I say that to my wife. I said, we're both seekers of the truth. And I don't know if you can describe yourself that way, but I sort of see it like that. And I think that that's the most important thing. And that's why I love that part of the scripture that I was reading earlier. That, what did it say? It said love. Let me see what it said.
Yes.
Oh, I changed the page. But I think, what did it say? Love seeks the truth, or love desires. What did it say? Do you remember? I want to find it again.
I can tell you what 1 Jonathan chapter 1 verse 1 says. It says this: my one responsibility to all of my brothers and sisters is to know how completely loved I am.
What is that's your book? Is that first
Gospel of
John?
Jonathan, chapter 1, verse 1. My
John,
one responsibility
John,
to all my brothers and sisters is to know how loved I am, how completely loved I am.
This is the one I was. Love rejoices in the truth.
And
Again,
that's
it's
the
like this
truth.
action
You're
word.
loved.
What's that?
And I would say that's where we agree. You agree that you are loved. You agree that being loved is the best way for you to, in turn, be loving to others. We totally and fundamentally agree about that truth. I think where we vary are the sometimes specific strategies that you seem to offer, that you seem to highlight as greater. I hear it as maybe greater expressions of love. That I say there's no hierarchy.
You call it strategies. I call it the same thing you do. I call it. I don't call it strategies. I call it loving, and that's how That's how I see it manifest in when I'm loved. I'm loving. So it's really not a deliberate strategy as much as it is. To me, it's more of an understanding. Like and which I think is the same thing you're saying. But I still see it as this intentional sort of verb that makes it important. It makes it important. It doesn't. It's not like I really don't ever look at it like if I don't do it, then I'm in trouble, or if I don't do it, I'm not loving, or if I don't do it, if I don't spread the love, then I'm doing something wrong. It just doesn't occur to me. Like, it just doesn't occur to me. And I know it does in most people. You're totally right about that. I really agree with that. But when I'm speaking about it from how I see it and how I perceive it and I believe it to be true, then that's how it's true. Like, and so again, that's why I sort of feel like that's where it's like a difference, but not a difference. You know, I mean, I'm just saying, like, sitting back and just sort of letting it be is cool. Like, that's being loved. I agree with it, but I just feel like there's some. I just think there's meaning and purpose and a drive that we should have. That we would. That I don't want to say should.
Here's a perfect analogy for you, to offer you my perspective.
Yeah.
What do you do to ensure that the ocean generates for you a good wave to surf on?
I don't do anything to ensure it, but I can do things to. I honestly can do things to know that it's going to be conducive to that, the elements and everything else.
That's all you can do. You have nothing to do with the wave other than understanding.
But look, this is going to prove the same point. It's going to do the same thing we've already been doing, because yes, I can look out and I can see that the wind is calm. I know there's a swell in the ocean that's supposed to be around this window. So I sort of know these things. You could say the same thing like, hey, I know my friend who's hurting is going to be at that party. And, you know, chances are pretty good if I go there, then I'm going to have a chance to be able to love them. So it works both ways, John.
Well,
we're the same, but we're different.
This is my point. My point is you do nothing to ensure that the ocean generates a wave. All you do is understand your relationship to the wave.
Which is perfect, which is being loved. I do nothing to make love, to make love exist. It has nothing to do with, you know, I don't do any of that. Like, I can't control, I don't ensure that, I don't do any of it. But.
And you could ignore love and you could say there is no love.
Well, see, it's going back to
that'd be like someone telling you there's never any good way to be really laugh.
Yes, true.
That's me. I'm laughing when somebody tells me there's no good love here. I laugh because I know I'm riding the wave right now. I did not generate this wave.
Hey, so I think we can go in circles here a little bit, because I think I can take the same thing and sort of make my little point too. But look, John, we agree. There's something. Let's do fear next week. Let's make fear the topic next week. Let's revel in it. Let's revel in it. So all week I'm going to meditate on fear. I hope we're doing good by next Sunday.
Here's a piece of cake. Easiest thing you can do.
Well, good. But
the most difficult experience because you confuse yourself when you're in fear.
Yeah. I have an understanding of it. I do. I think I probably have the same understanding as you. Just is probably going to come out in different ways and in different words. And I hope that we both find my words and your words beautiful.
Yes. I appreciate you.
I hope I make you think, John Crouch. I do. And that's not a bad thing, you know.
I would say
because you make me think. You make me think, and I think that might be something that you like.
I find myself leaning more, when we chat. I know that you're going to ask for practical ways of making what I say practical, and I deeply appreciate that. And what I find myself doing around you is drawing from metaphors and allegories that I hope help articulate the effortlessness of being. Just as you are.
I 100% believe in the effortless of being. I do.
And being is,
it is why I have peace. It is why I have joy. It is why I exist in these seemingly difficult circumstances, or what people would determine other people would think are difficult circumstances. It is why I have this love. It is why I have joy. It is why I have peace. But it is also why I share. It is also why I feel driven to do some of the things I do. I'm not doing it for money, but money will come. There are things I feel are important, but I think this root of that importance, or the feeling of the importance, comes from love, comes from the same thing you're saying. I don't think I'm effective if I'm not existing in that. I don't.
And see, that to me, what I would say is the difference. To me, there's no not being effective.
Yeah,
good.
You're right. You think you're right. I think that effectiveness matters, but it's not something I have to achieve. It's not something I strive to be. So I think that I am, when I'm in this state, when I'm in this understanding, and I think it is important, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think that I can be in a meeting or in a business and be confident in all of these things, but I can't be that way unless I'm in these principles, unless I understand them, unless I know I'm loved. Because at the end, it doesn't matter how I say it, but I also don't feel that I have this wisdom enough to think that, hey, it's really not wise to say things just to say them, or not wise to just say this in this setting. I mean, there's these things that come around that to me are important, and that's not to me based in fear. It can be, certainly can be, and I know it when it is, or at least I maybe not know it right at that minute, but I unpack it and I know it, because I can walk out of a meeting and say, why did I feel that way? What was that? Why did I say that? Or you say something, why did you say that? How did that feel? And that's when I can check and I'm honest enough and quick enough to say that was stupid. That was fear. That was fear. Why did I do that? I instantly go there. But at the same time, I being in life and being in my family, how I am around my children, how I am around my wife, how I am around my neighbors, things like that. I think it's important. I think it's important for not only for me, but for them.
Sure. And and the difference is I don't mentally think about them. I'm just, when they're around, I'm the same guy. I'm not thinking, should I be a certain way? I'm always.
Well, so am I. So am I. And that's the point I'm making. So am I. I'm the same guy. I'm the same guy, but I'm mindful of it.
See, I'm not. I'm not mindful of it. I'm not thinking.
Well, that's the
always
difference. That's
just
the thing.
same.
Yeah.
That's just the same in the sense of
Okay, so you're mindless and I'm mindful.
yes, I am perfectly mindless. Yes. And Myrna,
what did she say? Did she say amen? Is that what she said? Amen.
Just got an amen from Myrna.
Ah, yes, I love Myrna.
Yes, she is amening and hollering for you.
Not in the same context. I'm just being facetious. But mindless John can be.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Revel in it.
I'm mindless. I am the Forrest Gump of love. I may
like
not be a smart man, Brian, but I know what love is.
I like it. You're a big teddy bear.
That's right.
You are, and I look, John. Again, I think it's just beautiful. I'm going to watch this back, and I think I'm going to see the same thing. Like we're saying the same thing. I'm probably going to hear some things you said that I didn't hear right the first time. But I sure appreciate you. I absolutely 100% do. You mean a lot to me. It's important that I know you. I can use that word, and it's meaningful. Maybe more so than important. It's meaningful. I think there's reasons for things. I think God orchestrates things. I think that I know you said it's all done, and He's done it, and we may differ in how I'm saying that, but at the end of the day, I think that there are sort of, let's say, divine appointments. We use that term sometimes. Going back to our own free will, we make these choices. And we decide and we do things. And I think when we decide a certain way, certain things happen because of those decisions. And here I am trying to find myself a way to fit it into what you say, how you say things. At the end of the day, I think I live for a reason, some reason. I don't know what it is. I can't sit here and articulate it so great. And I don't think it's based in a fear-based mentality. Personally, I don't feel like I live like that or think like that. I know it comes on me. It happens. But I like the idea of going through life in a way that just makes sense. And if I can help people, love people, even if I do it intentionally or not intentionally, I still just like the idea of it. And I think getting around people like you challenge me. You challenge me in my thinking, you and others. And for whatever reason, we're communicating a lot more regularly than we used to. And if that's just because we're sitting around being loved and that brought us together, hey, great.
Well, this is all I know. When I saw you, it was love at first sight.
Ah, yeah.
When I saw Dion, it was love at first sight. And the only time I've struggled in our relationship is when I have projected onto you something in me that I believe was. And thankful of that in our relationship. And it's very easy for me to be with you because I know you value the same thing I do, regardless of how we articulate. In the end, it doesn't matter. You know you're loved. I know I'm loved. And in turn, we love each other. I mean, we could just say that every freaking Sunday for 2 minutes and get off. And that's all that really matters. But the reason we're saying so much more, from my perspective, is because of how complicated we have made it in this human experience. And I appreciate this sort of dialogue because my hope is that it helps others who are watching recognize their own complicated relationship with love and inspires them to simplify it one day at a time.
Hey, do you mind me asking? I don't want this to drag on, but I saw your brother do a post the other day, and real positive, I hadn't seen him do anything like that, of late. He looks fantastic, healthy, whatever, or anything. But I watched it through eyes of love, John, honestly. I hadn't seen your brother, talked to him, but I really felt like, I really felt loving towards when I was watching that. And I was thinking about you, like, I wonder if you saw that and how you felt about it.
I haven't seen anything. I'm blocked. He has me blocked on everything. So I don't see his creation that way. But I love my brother. I star 67 him the other day and got to pick up his phone, and I was like, "Hey, I got you. I just want you to know I think about you every day, and I love you." And he's like, "I love you too, bro." And that was it. You know, regardless of whether people want to talk to me or not, does not affect my relationship with them. Does not.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into that so much. I just wondered if you saw it, and I just think I don't even remember what the content was totally. You know, I mean, it looked to me like a statement that was was good. I mean, it was very good, very motivating, positive, and some of it sort of watching it, thinking some of that came from you, but I could see you in him. Just whatever it is, it's the genes and for whatever reason, I could see you in him.
Yes.
And that's cool, like, I don't know, it's cool. And I if you do talk to him again, tell him I said hello.
I will, for sure.
I'd love to reconnect with him again at some point, he's a
he'd love that.
Yeah.
Don't doubt he would love talking to you.
All right, my friend. Let's
call
it a night.
May the 5th,
hey, it's funny. You know what's funny, John? We went to I took the girls because Dion's sister's in town, so they were hanging out today. They went out and did some stuff, and I said, okay, I'll take the girls to lunch. And our favorite restaurant is this Mexican restaurant called Taco Surf. And I'm like, let's go to Taco Surf, and I had no idea. We pull up and like, man, can't park. There's no parking. Like, it's packed. We had to wait, and it didn't even occur to me. And we left the restaurant, and these guys are walking across with a big sombrero, and I go, oh, it's a Cinco de Mayo. No wonder. Clueless, totally clueless. It was funny, but the girls were like, what's that, Dad?
It happens all the time. My mom thinks it's Mother's Day. No,
Emily said, how do you know it's Cinco de Mayo? I said, well, I have a calendar.
Yeah.
All right, John.
Viva la Mexico.
Yeah, man. All right, my friend.
All right, my friend. You take good care of yourself, and see you soon.
All right. See you, John.
All right.
Bye.